For better experience, use headphone, and this story will definitely haunt you. And please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. The Town That Disappeared. Overnight. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, hidden beneath the overgrowth of twisted trees, lies the remains of Black Hollow, a mining town that vanished overnight. The official story? A sudden landslide, burying the town in rock and ash. But the locals whisper another version, one not found in any history book. A survivor, Old Man Lyle, once told his grandson about that night. He spoke of an unnatural fog creeping through the valley, how the air turned so cold it bit into their bones. He claimed he saw people walking out of their homes, eyes blank, mouths moving, as if whispering to unseen forces. Then, just as suddenly, the town was gone. The eerie part. They didn't just vanish. They left no trace, no footprints in the mud, no drag marks, no signs of resistance. Their clothes were found neatly folded in their homes, doors unlocked, as if they had left willingly, except they left behind their lives. Some who have dared to venture near the ruins at dusk claim to hear a distant humming, the sound of 100 voices blending into a single, sorrowful lullaby, a song that beckons the listener to step forward and never return. For decades, researchers have tried to uncover what happened to Black Hollow. Paranormal investigators report strange static interference whenever they attempt to record audio in the area, as if something, or someone, is actively preventing their documentation. Legends suggest that the town was taken, not by the land, but by something from beneath it, a force that pulled the inhabitants into another realm, leaving behind only whispers and echoes. Even stranger, satellite images show that the town itself sometimes appears and disappears, as if it exists in two places at once. No roads lead to it anymore, but those who seek it often report finding it when they least expect to, when they are lost, alone, and far from help. Chapter 2. The House That Burns But Never Dies. In the heart of the Arizona desert, there stands a town called Brimstone, a place that no one dares enter after dark. It is said that every night, a particular house at the town's edge erupts into flames. The fire rages, devouring the wood, the glass, the very air around it. Yet by dawn, the house stands again, untouched, waiting for its next burning. Local legend speaks of a man named William Hargrove, a reclusive preacher who came to Brimstone in the late 1800s. He was obsessed with purification, claiming the town was tainted with sin. One night, his own house caught fire with his family inside. No one saw him leave, yet his charred body was never found. Those who have tried to enter the house claim the walls are warm to the touch, as if the fire never truly dies. The mirrors in its rooms are said to reflect things that aren't there, faces peering in from beyond the glass, mouths opening in silent screams. And the whispers, always the whispers, telling visitors to leave before the next fire begins. Because the house does not burn alone. It takes a soul with it each time. Some have dared to stay overnight, attempting to document the phenomenon. Without fail, every one of them has vanished before morning, their last recordings filled with unintelligible whispers and the crackling of unseen flames. Those who have studied the legend believe the house is feeding, drawing energy from those who come too close, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to step inside. Chapter 3. The Unfinished Funeral. There is a town in the Pacific Northwest called Whitmore, where it is always foggy, where the trees seem to whisper secrets. The cemetery sits at its heart, and in that cemetery is an open grave that has never been filled. In 1952, a funeral was held for a young woman named Eleanor Gray. She had died suddenly, no cause, no explanation, just lifeless, as if something had taken her soul. The whole town gathered, the coffin lowered, the priest beginning his final words. And then, a knock from inside the coffin. The gravediggers froze, the priest dropped his Bible, and Eleanor's mother screamed. The undertaker rushed forward, prying open the lid. Inside was an empty coffin, no body, no sign she had ever been there. And yet, her grave remains open to this day, untouched, undisturbed, as if waiting for her to return. Locals say that once a year, on the night she was buried, a procession of shadowy figures moves through the streets, silent and solemn. Some claim to have seen a woman in white standing beside the open grave, her head tilted as if listening for something. Those who have approached too closely report a chilling sensation, an overwhelming sense of sorrow, and the unmistakable sound of dirt being shoveled. Chapter 4. The Town That Hears You. In the plains of Wyoming, there's a town called Echo, abandoned long ago. No one lives there. Yet, if you stand in its empty streets, you will hear voices. They call your name, whisper secrets only you would know, and if you stay too long, they start answering questions you never asked. A researcher once came to document the phenomenon. He recorded the voices, played them back, but what he heard wasn't his own voice. It was his mother's, his father's, his childhood friends, none of whom were alive. He fled that night, leaving his equipment behind. When a new team arrived years later, they found his recorder, still running, and on its tape, a single voice repeating over and over, "Come back, we still need you." Some believe Echo is not merely haunted, but alive. The town itself is sentient, feeding on memories, drawing in the lost and lonely. Once you hear its voice, it never truly leaves you. Those who escape report hearing the whispers long after they've gone, soft, insistent reminders that Echo is always listening. There are places long forsaken by time, towns where the winds whisper of tragedies too terrible to be forgotten, roads leading to nowhere, where shadows stretch too long and voices murmur from empty buildings. These are not merely abandoned places, they are remnants of horror, left to rot beneath the weight of their own stories. Tonight, we journey into these forsaken towns, uncovering the sinister forces that drove people away. The stories told in hushed tones, the legends scrawled into the walls by those who never left. Are they just myths, or do the spirits of the past still wander these lonely streets? What if the past isn't dead? What if it's waiting? Chapter 1. The Town That Breathes Deep in the Rocky Mountains. Nestled in a valley that never sees sunlight, lies the skeletal remains of Carrion Ridge. Once a thriving logging town, it now exists only in whispers and forgotten maps. The last census recorded over 200 residents. Now, there is nothing left but their empty homes and something else. Those who have dared to enter tell of an overwhelming pressure in the air, a sense that the town itself is breathing. The trees that encircle Carrion Ridge are twisted and gnarled, their branches bending toward the streets as though reaching for something. A few scattered belongings remain, left behind in an impossible hurry. Food left to rot on dining tables. A child's doll sitting in the middle of the road, its eyes torn out. Then there are the footprints. Fresh tracks appear overnight, crisscrossing through the abandoned buildings, leading to nowhere. Some disappear into solid walls. Others form circles, as if some unseen entity, is pacing, waiting for a visitor. There are no animals, no birds, only the sensation of breath against your skin, though the wind does not blow. The last known report came from a group of hikers who ignored the warnings. Only one returned. He spoke of doors slamming shut on their own, of his friends screaming in the distance, voices distorted and wrong. When he looked back, the town was gone, as if it had never been there at all. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Name. In the swamps of Louisiana, past the ruins of an old plantation, there lies a town whose name has been erased from history. Maps no longer mark its existence, and even the oldest locales refuse to speak of it. The only remnants of its presence are the crumbling buildings hidden beneath the moss and decay. It is said that those who enter feel an immediate sense of dread, as though unseen eyes watch from beneath the stagnant water. The structures lean, sagging as if weary of their own existence. Every window is broken, and every door left ajar, as though the town was abandoned in a hurry. But the strangest thing? No one can remember its name. People who research it lose their notes. Travelers who attempt to document it find their photographs blank. Even those who have walked its streets forget the details as soon as they leave. The only proof of its existence lies in the memories of those unfortunate enough to visit. But even those memories fade, replaced with an unshakable sense of loss. Legends say that the town does not want to be remembered, that it erases itself, consuming the minds of those who try to recall it. Some say it was cursed. Others whisper that it never truly existed at all, and yet it waits for new visitors. Chapter 3. The Endless Tolling of Hollow Bell. In the heart of the Midwest, where fields stretch for miles and roads seem to lead nowhere, there is a town known as Hollow Bell, or at least that is what the rusted sign at its entrance claims. Few have heard of it, fewer have seen it, and even fewer have returned. What makes Hollow Bell infamous is the sound. A bell tolls from the old church at the town centre, ringing at midnight and midday, though no one is there to pull the rope. The sound carries for miles, but the closer one gets, the quieter it becomes, until, at the town's edge, it stops completely. Visitors have reported figures standing at the windows of the church, silhouettes that vanish when approached. Some claim to hear voices in the ringing, whispers layered beneath the metallic chime. They speak of things long forgotten, secrets buried beneath dust and time. No one knows who built the church, and no one knows who rings the bell. But those who have dared enter the church at midnight say the bell continues to swing, even when the air is still, and when it stops, the silence is deafening. Chapter 4. The Road to Nowhere. There is a road in the Nevada desert that appears only when it wants to. Drivers who travel at night, alone and without destination, have reported seeing a turnoff that should not exist. A narrow dirt path, lined with withered trees, its destination unknown. Some who take the road say they drive for hours, yet never arrive anywhere. The landscape never changes. The sky remains black. Their radio turns to static. Their headlights dim, as if something is absorbing the light. And then they see the town. A cluster of dark buildings, no lights, no movement. The air is thick, heavy, pressing against their skin. Some claim to have seen figures standing on the rooftops. Others describe shadows moving between the alleyways. But no matter how long they explore, the town remains lifeless until they try to leave. Those who attempt to turn around find the road gone, the buildings stretching on forever. The only way out is forward, deeper into the town's empty streets. Some say they eventually return to the highway, exhausted, confused, unable to remember how they got back. Others are never seen again. The road disappears by dawn, leaving only tire tracks leading to nowhere. Final words when the past calls. Why do some places refuse to be forgotten? Are these just stories, exaggerations of the imagination? Or is there something real lingering within these forsaken towns? Perhaps the past is not as distant as we believe. Perhaps in the quiet corners of the world, there are places that remember. The next time you see an unfamiliar turn-off, an abandoned house with an open door, or a town that shouldn't be there one show, ask yourself, did you find it by chance, or did it find you? Some roads lead to forgotten places, and some roads never let you go. In the forgotten corners of the American Midwest lies Ashford Hollow, a ghost town with a legacy of darkness, its name whispered in the hushed voices of those who know its tale. The town, once a thriving mining community in the late 1800s, is now little more than crumbling ruins, its buildings overtaken by time and nature. However, its legacy of despair and death has not faded, and some say that the restless spirits of Ashford Hollow still walk the earth. Chapter 1. The Stranger's Arrival. The story of Ashford Hollow's haunting began with a man named Samuel Turner, a writer from Chicago seeking inspiration for a new book. Samuel had always been drawn to the macabre and eerie, the kind of places that stirred the imagination with their forgotten histories. Ashford Hollow, with its dilapidated buildings and ominous reputation, seemed like the perfect place to immerse himself in the supernatural. He had read about the town's eerie past in an old journal at the library, where it was said that the once prosperous town had been wiped out in a sudden and mysterious disaster. Some claimed the town had been cursed. Others believed it was the result of a mass exodus caused by something far darker. Samuel drove for hours, past the rolling hills and overgrown fields, until he finally reached the outskirts of the town. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the dirt road as his car bounced over the uneven ground. His excitement was palpable. He had never encountered a place like this before. The town looked abandoned, with broken windows and collapsed roofs, yet the sense of life, or rather death, seemed to linger in the air. As Samuel stepped out of his car, a chill ran down his spine, but he shrugged it off. He had heard all the rumors about Ashford Hollow, but he was a man of reason, not superstition. He began to walk through the streets, his boots crunching against the dry earth. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. As he ventured deeper into the heart of the town, he noticed something strange. There were no animals, no birds in the sky, no insects buzzing in the air. It was as if the very essence of life had abandoned this place. Samuel continued walking, passing the remains of old houses, their rotting walls sagging under the weight of years of neglect. One building in particular caught his attention. It was a small general store, its faded sign swaying gently in the breeze. The door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior. Old shelves lined the walls, their contents long gone, but on the counter there was a single object, a small, weathered journal. His curiosity piqued. Samuel picked it up, brushing the dust off the cover. The leather was cracked with age, but it was still intact. He opened the journal to the first page, which was dated over a century ago. March 3rd, 1887, the last day of our town. Something is wrong here. The air feels thick, like a storm is brewing. The miners are nervous, and even the most hardened among them have taken to avoiding the tunnels. They say they've heard voices in the dark, voices that don't belong to the living. The journal entry sent a shiver down Samuel's spine. It was clear that something had gone terribly wrong in Ashford Hollow. He turned the page, eager to learn more, but the writing became frantic, the words harder to decipher. As he read further, it became evident that whatever had happened to the town was far worse than a simple disaster. March 4th, 1887. The town is deserted. The streets are empty. People have disappeared without a trace. The mines are sealed. But I swear I hear something scratching from beneath. The earth is alive with something. Something we awoke. Suddenly, Samuel heard a noise behind him. Soft, but unmistakable. A whisper, like a breath against his ear. He spun around, but there was no one there. His heart raced. He quickly shoved the journal into his coat pocket and made his way toward the exit. But as he reached the door, something caught his eye. In the fading light outside, he saw figures moving between the shadows. At first, they appeared to be nothing more than trick of the light, but then they became clearer. Pale, emaciated figures, their faces hollow and eyes sunken. They were the ghosts of Ashford Hollow. Chapter 2. The Curse of Ashford Hollow. That night, Samuel set up camp in the ruins of what had once been a grand hotel. He had intended to leave the town after his unsettling discovery, but the journal had ignited something within him. He had to know more. There was a history here, a story that needed to be uncovered. Despite the growing sense of dread, he decided to stay. As he sat by the fire, the wind began to pick up, and with it, strange noises echoed through the town. The distant sound of children laughing, the clattering of chains, and the unmistakable thud of footsteps, all echoing from places where no living soul should be. His thoughts wandered back to the journal and the desperate final entries it contained. It seemed that the town's residents had been aware of something lurking beneath their feet, something ancient and malevolent. A creature, or perhaps a force, had been awakened by the digging of the mines. They had disturbed something that should have remained buried. As the final entry noted, "It comes from the earth. We have awakened it. It is hungry. It feeds on fear, on despair. I can hear it now, scratching and whispering. There is no escape. If you find this journal, leave. Do not stay. It is already too late for us." Suddenly, Samuel felt a cold hand rest upon his shoulder. He turned, but there was no one there. The fire flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. The whispering voices grew louder, and then, through the blackness, he saw them. Shadowy figures, their limbs twisted and contorted, their faces gaunt and lifeless. They were the miners, the townsfolk, long since dead, trapped in an eternal nightmare. Samuel bolted to his feet and ran, the eerie wails of the spirits following him as he fled through the abandoned streets. His heart pounded in his chest, and the air seemed to grow colder with each step. As he neared the outskirts of the town, he stumbled upon a strange stone circle, overgrown with vines and moss. It was here, he realized, that the town's curse had begun. At the center of the circle stood an ancient statue, its features worn and indistinct, but the air around it hummed with an unnatural energy. Samuel reached out to touch it, and as his fingers made contact, a jolt of electricity shot through his body. The ground beneath him trembled, and the earth split open. From the chasm below, something began to rise. A monstrous shape, dark and formless, emerged from the earth, its presence overwhelming and suffocating. Samuel could hear the whispers now, louder, clearer. It was the voice of the creature, speaking directly into his mind. "You should not have come here. You have disturbed me." He stumbled backward, but it was too late. The town of Ashford Hollow was not just haunted, it was cursed. And Samuel, like all those who had come before him, would never leave. Epilogue: Ashford Hollow's final curse. The next morning, a lone traveller, a man named Thomas Gray, stumbled upon the ruins of Ashford Hollow. He had heard stories of the place, but never thought them more than mere superstition. As he wandered through the desolate streets, he found the abandoned car that Samuel had driven in. The door was still open, but there was no sign of the writer. Only the wind remained, whistling softly through the cracks of the dead town. Some say that Ashford Hollow still calls to those who dare venture too close. The town remains, a place trapped in time, where the spirits of the past are never at rest, and the cursed creature that lurks beneath the earth waits for the next soul to awaken it. And so, Ashford Hollow endures, a reminder that some places are best left forgotten, their secrets buried beneath the weight of history, and the earth itself